ultimate value of life depends upon awareness and the power of contemplation, rather than mere survival. Aristotle. The Walking Dead, Season 1, Episode 6, TS-19. Trigger warnings for this episode are sexual assault and suicide. Please stay safe and stay sane. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Feed Don't Eat Your Brain. I'm Zachary Ballard, and with us for our final episode of Season 1 of The Walking Dead, I have Emily Dale with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Dale, and I am a student at the moment, and I like zombie content.
Yeah, so... Emily, what did you think about the episode? I know that this is your first time watching Walking Dead, so what are your first impressions?
They cover a lot of really heavy topics, and ask, a lot of really good questions, which surprised me. I noticed, the theme on this episode was a lot of, hopefulness versus hopelessness. Mm-hmm. Is that the right word? Yeah.
Yeah.
And seeing, how different people are impacted by that. It was interesting to see, all of the different reactions.
Yeah. I definitely saw that as well as the worth of life and what makes life worth living. The first thing I wanted to touch on was at the beginning, Shane's in the hospital and soldiers are just killing innocent people. I mean, we don't know if they're bitten. They probably were. We don't know if they're just sick, but all we see is these soldiers just killing these people, and it just seemed like their life basically meant nothing just because they were sick. So, what are your thoughts on that?
It was really interesting because I actually wrote that down in my notes. That they just killed indiscriminately. There was no are they actually bitten? Are they sick? And I was obviously I'm appalled by it, but in the context, you're is that a reasonable thing?
I mean, I'm sure the soldiers are also equally as scared of what's going on because everything's going to hell. But yeah, I thought it was very intriguing that they immediately started killing sick people. Yeah. And so. That was just a small thing, but then throughout this whole episode, Andrea is she's super depressed because her sister just died, and she just thinks that nothing can get better and there's nothing left. Which I don't know. I think I'm sort of on the side of Rick, where it's I think they haven't given it enough time to help rebuild. I can see why people would have depressive thoughts and okay, I don't think this is going to work out. I don't think life is going to go on after this. The doctor says, he's this is our extinction event. But I feel like they still haven't given it enough time to be oh, this is our extinction event,
Yeah. And, as much as I understand where Andrea's coming from, because, depressed mess sometimes.
Yeah, same here.
It just felt really, don't drag everybody down with you. If you want to be upset and you want to just be done, it was the dragging everybody else. So the thing I really loved Dale, throughout this entire episode and throughout the series. But the thing I really liked is how he addressed the Andrea situation. Because he really was here's the deal. You can be down, but you've impacted my life, and here's the impact you've had on me. Is this what your sister would have wanted? Yes, the world's not going to go back to normal, but we can create a new normal, something that's worth living for and working forward to.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I mean, and Dr. Jenner, he kind of made that decision for them. He was since I don't want to live, why would you guys want to live?
Oh, that angered me.
What's the point of you guys living if I don't want to live? It's hopeless. And he made that decision for them. At least Andrea, Andrea, we'll talk about that later, but Andrea was just going to do it for herself instead of Jackie. But he was no, you guys don't want to live.
Yeah, that straight up angered me.
Oh yeah.
Because the thing is it's one thing to let self-destructive thoughts and behaviors get to you, and I mean that sucks, and you need to address those, obviously. And it's important to take care of those, but to inherently try and convince everybody else to think the same thing, and the fact that it's it doesn't matter that you disagree with me, you're still going to follow the self-destructive train. It was essentially a murder-suicide is what he was trying to do. Yeah. And I don't know, it's when someone else has what they want to do and it's not being considered at all. There's no compromise.
Well, I mean, and then he said to them, he was when that door closes, it's not going to open again. I know the law doesn't exist now, but under contract, contracts are not binding if you sign under duress. And those people were under duress, so that doesn't count as an actual decision, an actual conscious decision, because like they were under duress and they were like, of course, let us in. Like, we'll, just let us in because walkers are coming and it's nighttime.
Yeah, well, and there was no context into what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the idea was, you're not gonna just come in and then leave immediately.
Yeah.
Like, the implication was that, like, you're here to stay and help out with the community.
Yeah, exactly.
They were under the impression there was multiple people there and that there was some sort of thriving.
Yeah, no, he didn't say, like, if you come in here, you're gonna die in here.
Exactly.
Because then they probably, would have left. But, like, they were like, okay, yeah, we'll help out. And then it was just him, so he just tried to make the choice for them, which was not okay, in my opinion. And Rick even stated it. He was like, give us the chance to try.
Yes.
Give us the chance to keep on trying. And yeah, it's sort of a rough thing. And I find it interesting that, so Rick is drunk and he goes up to Dr. Jenner, and he's like, you don't know what it's like out there. Like, you may think you do, but you don't. And I find it interesting that I feel like Dr. Jenner would have more hope than Rick does, because he wasn't out there. He doesn't really know what's out there and how to survive. And I don't know, he might have been like scared to want to try to survive out there because he wasn't originally surviving out there. So I think he might have been terrified, honestly, to go out there and to try to survive when the power goes out,
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's an interesting take, because I think he definitely was scared to go out there to see what would happen, but I think he also genuinely thought there was literally no survival out there, because he was surprised to see that they showed up at his door. He's like, what the heck? Why are there people here? What's going on?
And then we end up learning that there are more people out there surviving,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting that didn't give him hope either. Like, the people have been surviving out here. They needed a temporary solace.
Yeah.
And rather he took that to be more fearful.
Yeah.
Like, to take that fear and amplify. He's like, yeah, you said yourself.
I guess he saw, like, how beaten down they were, and, like, already in a month, the trauma that they've been through, and he didn't, I don't think he wanted to live that. I think he saw that and was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm just gonna off myself. Well, he even decided that before they came, but he was still, like, set in his decision to off himself. And I think that it has to do a lot with something to live for, because Rick has his family to live for. Shane and Daryl, I mean, they don't really have family, but I think
they're their found family.
They have their found family, and they have, like, this group to care for and to live for. And I mean, Daryl still has Merle. Daryl still has Merle to live for, and because he doesn't know if he's dead or not. And so everyone has someone to live for, or something to live for. And Dr. Jenner, before, he had his work. He had his wife, and then he had his work. He had trying to find the cure to this. And then when that ended, he was like, okay, there's nothing to live for anymore. And when I first watched this when I was 16, Dale's comment to Andrea where he was like, you don't get to just walk into someone's life, make them care, and just check out. Like, that has stuck with me since I was, like, 16. Because that's such a good line. Because it's so easy to be in your bubble. And, like, this only affects me. This is my choice. But it affects him, too. Because he ended up caring about Andrea. And so he was like, he made the decision. He was like, if you're gone, then I have nothing to live for. So what's the point of living if you're gone? So, yeah, you saw a lot of, like, something to live for. And that you have to have that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really did like that comment. Like, that stuck out to me as well. You don't get to come in and then just make me care and leave. Because I think it's easy to forget. Like, it's easy to think we're just, like, so small and insignificant. And it's easy to forget that we have value even if it's just one person.
Yeah.
Like the impact that we have is huge. And even if it's just for one person, like, it's not fair to do that to someone.
Yeah. I mean, suicidal thoughts are a very real thing. And going kind of dark here, I've had suicidal thoughts. And it's very hard when you're having those thoughts to think outside of, who is this going to affect? And I think the minute you start to think who this is going to affect, then that sort of helps you, continue to push through. And sometimes a lot of people don't feel like their death will affect anything. And that's, I think, where you get, people that follow through. By the way, I'll say this every time I mention suicide. Call someone. There's always help. You can call the suicide hotline. Please help yourself. Like, you deserve to live.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, your life has value whether you see it or not, because other people around you, like, they definitely see it, you know.
Yeah. I think that's been the interesting thing, because I've lost a lot of people to suicide in my life in the past. And, like, I've been on both sides of those thoughts. Been on the I've lost somebody and the I've had the thoughts and been in the space. And you really don't think about other people when you're in that headspace. And I think the thing that jarred me into reality was I lost a friend my senior year. And I turned to my mom. I was like, why am I angry? Like, I'm angry. Why should I be angry? Why am I not sad? I'm, like, angry. She's like, because she made you care. Like, she's your friend. You care. And she left by her decision. Of course you're going to be upset about that. Now, obviously, it's not only anger. Like, there was sadness, but it really hit, like, there are people in my life I've met and I've made care about me. And it's not fair to leave them high and dry.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, it's so important to just realize that you have worth. And that it isn't over, like when something tragic or something bad, or you know, even if it's just depression that keeps eating at you, or if it's just continuous trauma. I'm so glad I didn't follow through in my suicidal thoughts, because, you know, life got so much better than when I was having them, you know, and life will continue to have ups and downs, and I definitely do have ups and downs, but to where my life was and to where it is now, and the quality of it is like so much better. And if I just decided to do that, then I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have all those great things that I've experienced so far, you know? And it's the same for everyone that has decided not to, you know, and if Andrea still has kind of a life afterward, but this is The Walking Dead. This is The Walking Dead. Everyone's gonna have these lives. But I mean, she fell in love, quotation marks, with someone. He was a really bad dude. But she fell in love with him. She got to live on a nice farm for a little bit. But, like, I mean, imagine if everyone else decided to commit suicide, you know? Lori ends up getting pregnant, and so she had a baby. That baby wouldn't have existed. There is argument on whether to have a baby in that world or not. I mean, this isn't proving my point, because most of them die anyway. but in this life, there's always a reason to live, and you have value.
Yeah, we don't have walkers coming after us.
Yeah. But always seek out help and such. All right, moving on. I kind of want to talk about, like, the human aspect that they, like, lose. Were you going to mention that?
Yeah, I wrote that down. I actually didn't write it down. Because the one thought that I had there. I like that they address that, because a lot of times there's always this ambiguous question of, like, are they still, like, in there when they turn?
And I mean, they're like, well, are they still alive? He's like, look at that. There's brain activity, but it's just the survival aspect of it.
Yeah, it's literally just the brainstem. There's none of the personality or the memories there.
Yeah, and I mean, when you lose your humanity and what makes you you, then that's also a reason to want to die. I mean, if I was a walker, I'd want to die.
I'd be like,
well, I mean, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that you'd want to die, but me now, as a human, and as a person with a personality, I'd be like, if you find me as a walker. Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you find me as a walker, gank me.
Yeah, like, in the moment, I wouldn't know. But right now, with my personality, I would want to die, you know?
Yeah, I think it's, like, losing humanity definitely would be horrifying.
My biggest fear is to get Alzheimer's. Like, that's one of my biggest fears.
That's
not that they lose their humanity, but they lose their memory, and sort of what makes them them, you know?
Yeah, and I definitely understand that fear. Like, that, the idea of not knowing who I am or what's going on around me, whether that be through, like, loss of memory from Alzheimer's or dementia, or whether that be because I'm reanimated after dying, like, the idea of not being myself is definitely terrifying.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, put me out of my misery.
Yeah.
Even though I probably wouldn't feel the misery at that point in time, put me out of my misery.
Yeah. You know, people deal with that. People deal with their loved ones kind of losing who they are, whether it's through an accident or whether it's old age. And it's hard to go through when, like, you lose your personality and you lose what makes you you. I want to talk about Dr. Jenner saying you think you have more time and then it's gone. And that's so true. Like, I'm only 23, and I've been thinking a lot about, like, what if I die tomorrow? And I don't know why. I don't know why those thoughts are creeping in, but I just keep thinking, I'm 23, not going to die of old age, obviously. But it's just sort of, I mean, I've had three or four people from my high school already pass away through tragic accidents or, like, shootings. And, like, and it's so crazy. I was talking to my friend Quentin about this, that, like, they had no idea that was their last day. and then they were just gone, and that's it. Like, we don't realize how fragile our lives are, you know?
I think, like, grasping with the reality of how fragile life is terrifying, but it's also freeing in the same aspect. Because when you start to realize how fragile it is and that you don't know how much time you have left, you don't know when your last day is going to be. For me, like, recognizing that, I tend to start trying to live my life in a more free way. Like, living my life to the fullest, not shoving myself into this mundane box of these are the things that have to get done, but rather, or these are the things that are going to get me money, but rather things that I actually enjoy and that I can better myself and the people around me with. And when I live my life more to the fullest, it's less scary to think that maybe I could die.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thought of dying, there's religious people, and you know, I consider myself spiritual, not necessarily religious.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even if you believe that there is a life after death, that doesn't mean that there's a life after death, because we don't know, you know?
Yeah.
It's sort of grappling with that reality of, like, I hope it's true. I hope there's life after death, but I just don't know, you know? And I do agree that, like, once you grapple with the fact that you might die, it makes your quality of life better because you want to live it better.
Yeah. And I think, like, the harsh reality too is even if there is a life after death, we don't know what that looks like. Even if we could with absolute certainty say that there is one, which I like to believe that there is one.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know what that looks like. Is it entirely separate from here? Do we get to watch over our loved ones? Like, we don't know.
Yeah. Which religion is the truth? You know, it's like, it's definitely very scary, but also very freeing at the same time with your own life.
Yeah.
To grapple with that. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I thought it was interesting. Or even the fact that, like, our old lives before COVID were,
so
you know, were so different. And, you know, I don't think I'll ever eat another birthday cake that's been breathed on again. Because, you know, I spent a year thinking about that stuff. But, like, we one day we were living our lives normally, and then we blinked and it was, like, all gone.
Yeah.
Like, most of us are still alive, but we thought that life was going the way it was going to go, and then it just took a left turn. And that's what happened with them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, that's crazy. Like you said, it was like a blink of an eye. I literally had come home for the week.
Yeah.
Got on a flight back to school, and then, like, 3 days later, I was packing my room to drive all the way back home from Montana, and I was like, what?
Yeah, I was in,
what
like,
is happening?
3 shows. I was going to go to New York. Like, it was so... And New York was, like, epicenter for it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, guess I'm not going to New York. Oh, guess I'm not doing these shows. Oh, guess I'm doing school online. Like, it was crazy.
Guess I'm hiding in my house for a year.
Oh, yeah. And so, it's very interesting and very relevant to our day. Like, this whole thing, this whole show, zombies, are very relevant to what we experience. The biggest change I saw in Worth of Life is Shane.
You're saying, like, in the value of... Like, not value, but,
like, his
quality?
worth of life. His quality and worth of life, like... He is such a complicated character, and that's why I love him, and that's why I hate him at the same time.
Yeah, this was definitely an episode to not like him.
Yeah,
to
not really like him. But on the other hand, at the beginning of the episode, you really liked him because he was trying to help Rick. You know?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and, like, so they show you that, and then they show his, like, really dark side to him, and so basically, to the people that haven't watched it, we see that Shane goes to the hospital to try to save Rick while he's in a coma. And Shane is trying. He's seeing soldiers kill innocent people, and he's trying to, like, wake him up. He was attached to a bunch of things. He put his ear to his heart. He didn't hear a heartbeat. He thought he was dead, so he was like, "Okay, I'll do the next best thing. I'll leave, but I'll barricade the door, and I'll hopefully save his life if he's still alive." And then he leaves and goes and helps Lori and Carl. And then that was that. So we find out that backstory, that he actually actively went to the hospital to try to help Rick. There's still the question of where the hell is his family, but whatever.
Yeah, that was a little... where did they
I don't know,
go?
it seems weird. It seems a little iffy to me, but then he goes and helps them. He gets really drugged. He gets really drunk-faced. And he goes and confronts Lori after Lori told him, "Hey, don't talk to my family ever again, because you lied to me." But she doesn't realize that he, like, lied to her. He didn't mean to lie to her.
It was a lie of lack of knowledge, not a lie of omission or intention.
Yeah, he thought he was telling the truth. And then he's drunk, and he hasn't felt love in a while, and he basically sexually assaults her, and she, like, scratches him to get him off him. And he gets off, and then he, like, leaves, right? But...
the only decent thing he did in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, it is so, like, it's such a really tricky situation, because I feel like if they would have handled it like adults, that would have happened.
Yeah, this is a complicated situation of, like, no, it's not intended to be victim blaming, so that's not the intention. But had everybody been on the same page with the same information, he definitely wouldn't have felt as, like, ostracized and alone as he did. That doesn't make what he did okay, but, like...
If Lori understood that he wasn't intentionally trying to lie, and they were both adults, and they were both, you know, trying to seek affection in this awful, awful world...
Yeah.
Then I think she probably wouldn't have told Shane to basically F off. But in the same vein, I feel like Shane has a responsibility to understand where Laurie's coming from as well. It does seem like he lied, and it seems really shady that he just went and cared about Rick's family instead of his.
Yeah.
And so it's just a really messy and complicated situation, and
well, she effectively, like, villainized him.
Yeah, immediately.
With no listening, no compromise, nothing. She essentially, if I can talk, essentially villainized him. And so when you've been villainized, sometimes, like, your thought goes to, like, well, might as well be the villain if that's going to be the only way I get what I want.
Yeah, and like, Shane lost. I like to imagine that Shane lost his original wife, whatever, you know, and then he was like, hey, gotta go check on my best friend. He's dead, maybe. And then he's like, hey, gotta go help my best friend's family, because it's the next best thing to family I guess I have.
Yeah.
And then that's his way of, like, receiving affection and love, and then in a split second, it was, like, immediately ripped away. It was just gone. And he lost control, and I think he's losing his reason to live, and he's just trying to hold on to that, you know? And he's holding on to it in a really shitty way.
Yeah. And I think he vocalized it really well in that moment. Like, again, the actions aside, they were not good.
Yeah.
Bad actions.
Yeah.
But he had said, like, you couldn't have done what we've done without feeling love. You can't tell me that that you've never loved me and that there was no love ever there.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the thing is love is very abstract.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking for connection and people to give you purpose when you're talking, like, apocalyptic settings. Like, you want a purpose. Yeah. And so if your purpose can't be your family because they're dead, it can't be your partner or best friend because they're dead, you go to their family, like, next best thing, like you said. And, like, that doesn't make any of those feelings less valid or less real, but it definitely does amplify the situation when
and also when alcohol's involved, like, you're just inebriated, you can't control yourself as well.
Yeah, I think alcohol in the apocalypse is an interesting topic.
It's very interesting, because it's just, like, it seems really dumb to me, but it also seems really understandable to me. Like, I don't know, if I was in the apocalypse, I would definitely be tempted to drink, just to, like, maybe forget at some point, but it's also very unsafe to drink in the apocalypse.
Well, and I think, like, obviously they were in a safe setting because they were within this compound. It was, like, there was nothing getting in there. But I think at the same time, like, when you're in a life or death scenario, drinking is very complicated. I don't know, like, I don't like the idea of, like, even having my actions and thoughts and the things I say impaired. Yeah. Let alone, like, gone and forgotten. Yeah. But, like, I can understand the appeal of it when you're talking in, like, the apocalypse, but, like, at the same time, like, you got zombies chasing after you. Yeah. Like, you gotta stay sharp. You can't be, like, having a hangover the next day and be slow the next day. Like, if you're gonna get, you're gonna get drunk that night, like, anything beyond tipsy is a little
and then they all wake up hungover. And
they're all beyond hungover.
And,
poor Glenn.
Yeah, poor Glenn.
This kid, though, he's like, never let me drink again.
Yeah. But, yeah, I think Shane really was just trying to grasp for any humanity, and he just can't find it, because it was just ripped from him. And, you know, but also, he shouldn't have sexually assaulted Laurie. Yeah, Laurie either.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm very angry, and I hope that he becomes a better person throughout the show.
Oh, you gotta just keep on watching, you'll see.
But, yeah, no, I definitely was angry.
Yeah, this is definitely the spiral of Shane, and I think if they handled it like adults, it would have probably ended differently. And Rick still has no idea what's going on. He just thinks Shane's being an asshole.
That's fair. But, I forget he's still in the dark about that.
Yeah, and Shane is being an asshole, but I feel like
It's also combined with Lori not letting him tell
and
Rick
not even
what's
letting
going
him
on.
be with his best friend too is really, but yeah,
because they were partners and best friends like before everything.
Yeah, it's definitely a very hard situation. All right, so speaking of alcohol, I wanted to talk about like giving Carl alcohol, especially. What do you think about that?
Well, I definitely like don't condone giving kids alcohol. I'm very much like, don't drink if it's not legal, bro. But this is also the apocalypse and the laws don't apply. So
yeah. I mean, Dale also mentions like that in other countries that people like the drinking age is way lower, and so I kind of want to talk about like the drinking ages in different countries because I think we have one of the highest drinking ages ever. Like in Europe, it's 18.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Canada's 18, not 18. 18.
Yeah, and like so, what makes drinking ethical versus unethical in terms of like giving it to minors?
I think the big thing is like consciously understanding what it can do to your body because like. To put it bluntly, alcohol is literally just poisoning yourself to get a high. That's what it is. And to give it to a child who has no context or concept of what risk they're taking versus the reward, I guess.
Yeah.
I think is a little messed up. I like the fact that it was wine. Like, Rick totally knew.
Very low alcohol content.
Rick totally knew the Carl was not gonna like this.
That's
why I was like, you know what? Let the kid have.
Everyone was like, let him have a sip. And I think that's why kids like when they don't understand what alcohol does. They drink it. Kids usually want nice tasting things,
and they're like, ugh.
And so they're like, "Why would you drink this?" Like I remember when I was a kid, my brother-in-laws got like non-alcoholic beer. Like it tasted like beer, but it wasn't alcoholic. Thinking of it as an adult, I'm like, "What's the point? It's nasty beer, and it's not alcoholic." But anyway, I guess people like the taste. But like they like put non-alcoholic beer in my cup, said it was ginger ale, and then I drank it, and I like spit it all over the table, and I was like, how could you drink this?
Yeah.
But I guess it's sort of just like, and also kids just want to be like adults, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And there's like a thrill of doing something illegal. Like that's the huge thing. Cause I've noticed like I was at a community college after I went to Price, and everybody just wanted to get drunk, and I was like, bro, like it's not like.
Okay. Well, it's definitely the appeal of like doing something sketchy because you're not supposed to. Yeah.
Because like as soon as people hit 21, like they stopped drinking. Like they wouldn't touch it anymore, and I'm like, so you
it's
don't
so
like how it feels. You don't like what it does to you. You just like that you're doing something illegal, which is interesting.
You like the thrill of it, of doing it, you know.
But like the wraparound of like younger drinking ages and kids. I think like when it comes to ethics, the big thing is consent to understanding what's going on. But I think it's also wise for like to introduce alcohol to kids in a home setting rather than like no we like you'll never see alcohol whatever and then all of a sudden like they grow up, you're exposed, and you're at a club. Whereas like okay, you can only have this much. If you don't like it, don't drink it. And like we have full sobriety and ability to watch over you.
You're safe with us, you know, instead of being
going face in a bar and
unsafe or having your husband's best friend come into the room. And, you know, like, you are safe right here.
Yeah.
Like, you know, while you're drunk, you know, so that nothing will happen to you. And you can, I agree
in a
with
safe
that.
environment. So I think there's, like, the pros and cons to drinking underage or having lower drinking ages.
Yeah.
But I've noticed a lot of places, like, where they do have a lower drinking age, it's like, oh, you can drink at 18 or at 21, but you can drink at 16 if you're supervised by your parent or...
And I think that's smart. And I think when you shelter a kid from something... the more like the drinking age and wanting to do something illegal, the more you shelter a kid from something, the more appealing it is. So the more you shelter a kid from alcohol, the more appealing drinking alcohol is, and the more they're going to do it. Because they're going to find a way, unless you lock them in the house forever. They're going to find a way to drink unless you lock them in. And same thing with like anything like pornography. They're going to like the more you shelter them, the more they're going to try to seek it out. Or like sex in general, you know, just so many things. Well, kids want to be rebellious.
Like, it always starts with something small, too. Like, I've noticed with, like, the concept of rebellion. I had a really good friend whose, like, parents, great intentions, but put, like, so many restrictions on the internet access. So they figured out every single way to get around that, to watch a longer YouTube video, or to access Tumblr,
That's what I did.
Whatever. Like, figured out ways to work around it, and then it was like, oh, there's another thing. Well, they just figured out another way to work around it, and they didn't communicate with their parents. Whereas, like... there's things that, like, definitely my parents disagree with me on.
Oh, yeah.
But I am grateful that they were a lot more open to certain conversations than other parents.
Yeah.
And so, like, I got some pretty blunt, honest conversations about, like, alcohol. I think I got, like, sex talk. I don't know. It was never, like, a formal sex talk, but, like, those kind of things. And so it was never, like, a huge appeal for me.
Well, I mean, like, just being open about things. And, I mean, that's sort of what this podcast is about, is to talk about these things. Because if we don't talk about them, I feel like the more we hide things, the more bad stuff happens. The more things are out in the open, then, you know, the more educated we are and the more we can, you know, address them. I think it's a silly thing to be like, well, if our kid hears one swear word, they're going to start swearing. I mean, I have opinions on swearing. I really think that it depends on how you use the word.
Yeah.
You can call someone a non-swear word and mean it in a very offensive way, you know. I think it really depends on how you use the word, but that's my opinion. But it's just sort of, you know, if you want your kids to be a part of the world, you have to talk to them about things that are a part of the world that maybe you don't agree with. And, like, you know, states that teach abstinence only, the pregnancy rates are much, much higher because the kids don't understand what they're doing, you know?
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, is if you want your kids in your life, you have to talk to them like adults. And I mean, like, I'm not saying let's have a blunt conversation with a 4-year-old about sex, but, like, once a kid's old enough to be asking a question, they're old enough to kind of have at least the simplified version of the answer.
Yeah. Like, answer the question in the simplified way they ask the question, you know?
Exactly.
And, yeah, if... I totally agree with that. I think if a kid's old enough to be asking a question, then answer the question. Yeah. You know, you don't have to be all weird about it. Because if you're weird about it, then that makes them... Then they're weird about it, because they're like, oh, this is weird and taboo, so I'm supposed to be weird about it because my parents are weird about it, you know?
Yeah. I think the other thing is, like, knowledge is safety. Like, knowledge has so much power. And so kids that go into the world with little to no knowledge about certain things, like, are hurt much more easily than people who have the knowledge and information. So, like, kids who, like, I've never understood, like, the whole, you're not allowed to date or have a relationship, like, until you're graduated. And I'm like, first off, they're going to sneak around that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, like, there's certain things that are healthy about, like, dating in high school and...
having boyfriend and girlfriends in high school.
Yeah, like, learning what healthy boundaries are. But you have to create an open line of communication for your kids to talk to you about those kind of things. There was a lot that I wish I would have known. I didn't date until after high school. That was a mess.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you have rather learned the stuff in dating in high school when everyone else was starting to date?
Yeah, there was a lot that I didn't realize in that relationship that was unhealthy, and on both sides. But there was a lot with that relationship that was not healthy and okay.
Isn't it so much better, like, when you're going through a relationship, to have a trusting relationship with your parents so they can let you know, like, things that are going wrong, like if things are off, or they can let you know their opinions, you know? I mean, it's another thing if the kid is going to listen to you. But, I mean, if I would much rather, as a parent, like, know where my children are in their dating world so I can help them with it. So I can give them advice.
Yeah.
So I can see if there's warning signs and let them know.
And that was a huge thing because my parents and I love my parents and I've got a good relationship with them. But there have been times that we've been at odds or just didn't really understand each other and communicate as well as we should. One of those times was while we were in Price. And so there's a lot that, like, I wish we would have had that better communication to talk about those things because it would have been a lot less painful.
Yeah.
To be able to openly talk about those things. And even with the relationship that followed that, too. Like, we talked more, but not near as much as we should have. And the most communication I've had with my parents was when I was not even in the same state.
Yeah. And it's just important to not shelter your kids from things. And to just, like... And, you know, if a kid wants to start dating, like, when they're 14, we both grew up in Utah.
16 is the law.
It's 16 is the law, and I did not follow that rule. I didn't care. But it was so... but I learned so much dating before I was 16. Like, I learned, like, and it was hard. I mean, dating's hard. Dating's rough. Like, I feel like it's also, like, they're trying to shelter kids from heartbreak. But if people start dating, they're going to go through heartbreak. You know, they're not going to find their first... Usually, they're not going to find the one that they marry in their first date, or second date, or third, or 10th, or 50th. And,
I mean, even if they do, there's still a lot of heartbreak that comes without losing a relationship. Like, in a healthy relationship, there are times that heartbreak happens.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it sucks, but... It's an important part of growth. You're going to experience heartbreak, whether it's within a relationship or because you lost a relationship.
And, yeah, so talk to your kids like they're people, because they are people.
Yeah.
Cool. Last thing, I wanted to talk about...
This seemed like...
This seemed like such an interesting line, Because
Is it the fossil fuel
yeah, it's
line?
the fossil fuel line. Because he's talking about, like, well, this place, like, hosted some of the most dangerous diseases, so we have to have, like, a safety in plan, like, if the power goes out and we don't have enough gas. And then he was like, so this place will blow up when it runs out of gas, which is what is happening. Can you believe the world ends on, like, the world runs on fossil fuel? And I was like, that was, like, a plug in there.
Yeah.
Like, and I agree with him. I think it's really dumb because we're going to run out one day.
Yeah, it's non-replenishable. And this was back in, like, what, 08 that this
2010.
2010 was when this came out. Okay, yeah, so, like, at that point, like, the push for solar was still pretty low.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Alternative fuel sources were still really low.
Well, I mean, and I know why people don't want to do it because they have stocks or whatever, or, like, the big oil companies don't want to lose their money. But, I mean, it's like, wouldn't it be much better to transition into a renewable energy source so that we don't run out one day and then we, lose everything?
Yeah, and there's no, like, immediate, like, oh, boom, we're automatically on solar.
We're not going to
like,
switch immediately. It has to be a transition, but it would be so much easier to transition now than to, like, run out and have to scramble than what we're used to. It's like the one day you have it and the next day it's gone. That's what's going to happen if we don't transition now.
Yeah, and that's why you see, like, I've seen, at least back, like, in my home city, like, there's a ton of, like, people putting solar panels up.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten more of, like, the windmills.
Yeah, windmills.
Okay, I was like, is that the right term?
Yeah.
They're called windmills, fans?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But we've got a lot more of those going for additional power. But, like, I mean, it is a good point. Like, fossil fuel is not as quickly renewable as other sources. It's so slow in renewing that you can't even really call it renewable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not self-replenishing.
Yeah.
We have sunlight. We're stuck with sunlight until the sun decides to explode. And at that point, we're dead for other reasons. Yeah. Not because we didn't have power.
Well, we're dead due to not being...
to freezing.
Yeah, we're dead because...
Or the solar flare.
And it was out of our control.
Yeah.
Like, but this is in our control.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Combined sources. Let's transition.
Let's transition, baby boys and girls. All right. So that is the end of this segment. We will be back with a short musical break. And see you later. Back. So Emily, here's your moral dilemma.
Okay.
So a horse running in a race and breaking its leg, and then you have to kill it, or, like, there's puppies that aren't being adopted because they're blind, or they don't have 2 legs. Is it okay, and what animals is it okay to kill because they're disabled, or is it not okay? What animals are not okay?
Okay, that's a little more complicated than it. So obviously, when it comes to, like, dogs and cats and, like, domesticated animals that can be used as, like, pets, like, people need to get over themselves and adopt imperfect animals. Because you know what, like, I'm sick of, like, the whole I need a purebred whatever. I'm like, you know what, purebreds, like, they're in so much pain all the time because it's a process of inbreeding. But, like, I'm sorry, one of the cutest dogs I've ever seen is a little 3-legged dog, and he has more energy than any 4-legged dog I've ever met in my life. And, like, when it comes to, like, okay, so with the horses, like, I know, like, the healing process is, like, really extremely slow. And for an animal that really can't, like, not be on its legs most of the time, like, that's where it gets a little bit more questionable. Yeah. I know, like, now modern medicine, especially in, like, veterinary science, has improved, so, like, I don't think you should just, like, put it down, but I understand, like, if it doesn't heal properly, it's causing more pain.
Yeah, and that sort of goes into, like, having a painless death versus living a painful life.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing of the episode.
Yeah, and I think it's more about, like, the pain levels and stuff. So, like, if you can't get that leg to heal properly, like, for a horse, that's everything. Like, a horse can't walk on 3 legs in the same way, like, a dog can. A dog can figure out its way. The structure of a horse can't. Yeah. So, I can understand, like, putting down a horse for the sake of, like, putting it out of its misery versus, like, this dog has 3 legs but it's totally happy and it's not in pain. Like, why would you put it down? Yeah, so exactly. I think it really depends on, like, pain levels. Okay, it's, like the misery that it's in? Yeah. And does it also matter if it's, like, able to survive or not? I mean, like, because with, like, shelters where they take, like, wild animals, like, they either have to take care of them or they have to kill them because they wouldn't survive in the wild. What do you feel about that? I think if they have to go into the wild and they're not going to survive, I at least, like, I understand the thought process. I don't think I could necessarily do it, but I understand it's a similar premise to, like, why hunters won't leave, like, a deer half shot. Like, if they hit a deer, they're going to chase that deer down until they can confirm that it's dead, because you've literally put it at such a disadvantage that
it's going to die anyway.
It's going to die, so you might as well get the meat and the bones and use it for something positive, instead of just kind of let it die and decay.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes, not that, like, wild animals are less than domesticated animals, but when it's like you literally have to survive on your own and there's no way for you to conceivably do that, it's like preventing the misery. That's a hard question.
Yeah, it's hard.
Dang it, Zach. I don't necessarily think it's wrong. I don't necessarily think I could do that, but I don't necessarily think it's wrong.
So
it's a fighting chance.
Yeah.
If you have a fighting chance,
you
should be able
like
to
in the episode.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you for answering that question. What do you guys think? You can answer on our Twitter, which is @ZakiTheZombie. You can answer on our... everyone always smiles when I say Zaki the Zombie.
I love it.
You can also answer on Instagram @FeedDon'tEatYourBrain. You can also email us at feeddon'teatyourbrain@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions. Also, subscribe and follow on all the 14 Horsemen things. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, there's a lot that's going to be going on. Artificial Love is the short film that I shot and directed and wrote in a week, and that's coming out this Friday, so take a look at that. Follow on all the stuff. Emily, do you have anything you want people to follow you on, or anything else to say?
I mean, like, y'all are welcome to follow me. All of my handles are amazing. FUL Emily. I hate it, but that's what my handles are. I made it when I was like 13, but stuck with me.
All right, awesome.
And your life's worth living.
Awesome, yeah. Your life is definitely worth living. Keep living. Keep listening to this podcast, because it's dope. All right, thank you guys. Bye-bye.